So I thought a good way to start would be to talk about how you even got started with landscape design to begin with. And you've told me the story before, and what I remember most about it is how supportive your mother was and what a difference that made in your life for you to decide at a very young age to go into landscape design.
Yeah, and I'm not sure that at the very beginning that I actually thought I was going into landscape design as much as I was getting a chance to actually do landscape and creative things, that then as time went by, it seemed to be the right thing to be doing. So your question was interesting in terms of when did it start, because I have a very, very strong memory of my mother and I doing a seascape in the bathroom above the tub where she painted fish and I took green plastic tie and made it look like it was underwater sea kelp.
What's green plastic? Oh, tie for...
Yes, for a landscape tie. It was some sort of green plastic, and I'm not sure even exactly where it came from. But I remember very vividly, and we took shells and rocks and glued them onto the wall and everything. And we made this kind of diorama in the bathtub above the shower, maybe a 3x3 square, that was fantastic. Now, it may not have been fantastic, except that my mother was an artist, and so I will have to say that it was fantastic, and it may have been my first kind of encounter with that.
And how old were you at that point?
And I was probably, 7, something like that.
Wow.
And then my parents had bought a new home and a new track in Encino, and the front had come landscaped with a seeded lawn and a few shrubs and things, but the backyard hadn't had anything done to it. And I remember being somehow excited about the fact that Mom was hiring a landscape contractor to come over to do the backyard, and said to the landscape contractor, "My son is going to tell you what he would like to have in the backyard." And I designed a patio and a screen and a vegetable garden and a rose garden and a citrus garden and all these various things. And I'm not sure which came first, whether the fact that I was buying roses and buying plants and having the vegetable garden, and then I designed the patio and the overhead structure and all those things. But in any event, my mom was very much in favor of me doing that. So it was a very early age, probably, 10 to 12, something like that. I had a paper route that I earned money from, and that money went into buying plants for the backyard. And so I got to experience that firsthand. An interesting kind of thing back in those days, I was at a grade school, Nestle Avenue Grade School, that in their courtyard in the front of the school was this incredible tree, which I didn't know a whole lot about, but it was this tree that had multi-trunks. It was probably several hundred years old, that the school site had been picked out because that tree was there. And later, interestingly enough, that became my favorite tree, and I planted more of those native sycamores than any other tree. And I can literally drive around the valley and pick out places where I planted them, and they're full-grown giant trees. As a matter of fact, I'm working on a job right now where I had planted a number of them, and they're massive trees. So that certainly had a big influence on me from grade school. One of the other interesting things that happened at about that age, which I was about 11 or 12, is in our neighborhood a brand new country club and golf course opened up. And I showed up opening day to caddy. And I had done something like that with a golf course up in Washington at my mother's house when she had sent me up there for a summer. And my grandparents, not knowing too much what to do with me, just sent me on a pathway through the woods to a country club. And I remember coming through the woods onto these massive rolling lawns of green grass, and I was just absolutely stunned at how magnificent it was. So that was another contributing factor to my getting into landscaping. So back to the country club, I caddied for several summers and got to walk around golf courses, and frankly, golf courses are some of the prettiest places on the planet. Rolling lawns and sand traps and greens and trees, and they usually have picked areas that they couldn't put houses in because of the terrain, and these were made for magnificent golf courses, which has been a hobby of mine ever since those days. So there were a number of things that led to me being in the landscape business. And then, because my mother and I would go to nurseries and I would spend my money that I had made from the paper route, and as that would continue, I had other jobs. My mother and I would go to a variety of nurseries, and in the valley at the time, the nurseries were, I don't know, every half mile there was another nursery along Ventura Boulevard. And one of the places we went to was in Tarzana, and we would go to that place, and I had gotten my license by then, so I was probably 15 and a half, and it was during the summer, and my mother ends up asking the owners of the nursery, which we had started to know because we were in there often enough, if they ever needed any help or anything like that. And it was a Sunday. And when we got home to the house, the phone was ringing inside the house, and those were the days where there weren't cell phones. And we went in and got the phone, and it was the owner of the nursery asking if I could show up to work the next day.